Hi, my name is Dr. Frank Pasciutti. I'm a clinical psychologist, and this is my channel called Dr. Frank's Therapoems. Now, I'm the kind of doctor that's a clinical psychologist, and I've been a psychotherapist, clinical psychologist, for about 50 years. And recently retired, thought to myself, there might be things that I can share with people that could be found helpful that I learned over that period of time as a therapist. And one of the things I decided to do was to try to distill some major concepts down into some simple, rhyming, rhythmic poems that I call therapoems. And the reason I call them therapoems is because they're mostly related to topics that come up in therapy. And they're the kinds of metaphors and analogies that people remember later on. Oftentimes, long after their therapy is over, they may hold on to one of those metaphors, and it just gives them a reminder of what they have done, worked so hard on trying to accomplish. So today, I'm going to get into an area that is pretty familiar to most people who've been in therapy. And yes, that area is intimate relationships. How to get them going and how to keep them growing. The idea of growing relationships may not be held by everyone, especially when we're seeking one out. We're not thinking about growing, but a close, intimate relationship can be a people-growing arrangement, especially where there's love and commitment and a desire to each person to try to evolve and grow. The relationship provides plenty of grist for the growth mill. But how do you know the other person also wants that? And if they're right for you? And that's the challenge. Initially, maybe you'll feel that, a lot of qualities about that person seem to be appealing right away. Attraction, a smile, or the way they talk, and your intuitive response to them. But I'm going to share a poem with you. It's called When Mr. Right Left. He loves me not. It's hard to say, he's cold and hot. I can't quite get consistent reads. He acts so loving, what he needs. But then there's times when he'll resist my brief attempts to seek a kiss. He seems too bothered to respond and acts like he's been put upon. I wonder if it's good for me to chase his love, or if he'll be another man who wastes my time. And then one day I come to find it wasn't love he really felt, just something said so I would melt. And then I'd play into his hands where he could carry out his plans. And like the others, it would end with lonely nights where I would spend my time attempting to explain how I'm back in that place again. He's not the first guy I pursued because I fell for how he wooed, and then quickly let him have his way, believing in his arms I'd stay. But now I realize I should slow the courting process till I know that he who seems like Mr. Right is not revealed in just one night. So, that seems like it would be something we would learn more in our youth. But who's to say what it is initially that attracts us to a person? We could be lonely. We could feel like we'll overlook some qualities that may be evident to others initially. And interestingly, a psychiatrist who was a contemporary of Sigmund Freud called Carl Jung once talked about relationships and said in the beginning of most relationships, we do some projection. And by that he meant we have qualities, we have thoughts within ourselves. They might not even be conscious, but we attribute them to other people and then respond to them as if they possess those qualities. And this can work in a lot of different ways. But in relationships, oftentimes, it doesn't make clear right away who that other person is, but we may attribute qualities to them and fall in love with those qualities. Only later on to find ourselves realizing, oh, that's not who I thought you were, or I always thought you were this kind of a person. And so sometimes it'll lead to marriage or a committed relationship, but here's another poem that speaks to that particular issue. It's called You're Not Who I Once Married. You're not who I once married, incessantly refrained, repeatedly delivered, accompanied with blame, that I had somehow fooled you and led you to believe I'd be the one who's perfect, and now you feel deceived. I never was that person. It's you who misconstrued. You made me your projection, conceived of, then pursued. You now act like I planned it. I baited, then I switched. First I met your every need, then stopped once we got hitched. But we can still stay married if tolerance is found. We both have imperfections, and yet our love is sound. So strengthening our union requires what we do is learn to love each other with our warts and assets too. So yes, sometimes you can get resentful and feel like this person pulled one over your eyes, or where did this emerge from, or who is this person I thought I connected with? And it doesn't have to be in marriage, it can be in a committed relationship. But there's another element to this, and that is sometimes people themselves are not aware of what may emerge in a relationship. It may be the very fact that once you're in a committed relationship and you have a sense that this other person who loves you in an unconditional way, and it almost can set off an unconscious freedom or the ability to bring to the surface things that you need to heal within yourself that get reenacted with that person. And it could be a difficult time. And this is going to be a two-part episode, by the way, because this is about getting them going, relationships. Next episode, we'll talk a little bit about keeping them growing. But when you run into problems like this, could be a number of problems. Sometimes each individual may stonewall the other, may reach a point where they're just so darn angry or hurt that they don't even want to talk. And that creates a problem because it's really important, even if it's difficult to communicate. If you abandon that process, you worsen the prognosis, if you will, of what's going to happen. But I have another poem that speaks to that. I'd like to share that one with you too. It's called "It's Hard to Hug a Porcupine." You're acting like a porcupine. You poke and prick and pinch. And when I reach to help you, your recoil makes me flinch. If I try to talk to you, your words push me away. And filled with hurt and anger, you snap at what I say. Did I upset your feelings when we last had a row? There must exist a reason. I'd truly like to know. Do unexpressed emotions explain why there's this wall? 'Cause if I did offend you, I'd like to hear them all. But should you not express them, or what it is you need, then future reconnection is not where this will lead. Yet, if you laid your quills down and chose to work this through, we could get by this impasse and have our hugs renew. And sometimes it's just really hard. Somebody's got to go first, especially if you're both stonewalling or you're just feeling distance from each other. And that's okay. Doesn't mean you have to be hugging all the time. Sometimes you have to have a sense of separateness to just get clear about what's going on, and oftentimes it's not clear. I have found and shared with others that sometimes even if it's starting to reopen your embassies by exchanging letters, maybe at first, if the communication person to person gets confounded by emotions and somebody's not hearing or they're reloading what they're going to say and they haven't heard exactly what you would say, that makes sense, because when emotions run high, sometimes communications can be very unclear. So I have found, and people have talked about, that it is a helpful alternative initially, would be even to just exchange letters, to write down honestly what you feel, think it through. Sometimes people will say, I wrote this letter and it became basically a poison pen letter. Well, maybe that was something you needed to say just to discharge some of those feelings. But think through, especially if it's been some distance, what you're saying. Try to be honest and try to be open. And maybe there's a letter or two that goes back and forth before you're ready to sit down and talk again. But it's oftentimes not just the exchange of thoughts, but feelings that can be difficult in an intimate relationship. But they need to be expressed, they need to be heard and honored. Because in a way, emotions are the main currency of exchange in intimate relationships particularly. Of course, you share thoughts, there's a physical relationship, but oftentimes the one that is most difficult for us to identify within ourselves and certainly honor and hear in the other person are their feelings. And so lastly, I would say, is we're going to talk next time about how do you deal with the expression of feelings, be it anger or sadness, fear. They're difficult to have and they're difficult to hear, and to learn how to respond in a way where the other person truly experiences you as understanding and having the empathy for where they're coming from. And sometimes that can be very difficult if you don't agree or understand why they have that feeling. But we'll pick this up next time when we do part 2 of intimate relationships, how to get them going and growing. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, one last thing before I go. This is a community space, and I welcome any thoughts you might have, comments or suggestions about future episodes. You'll see my email posted at the end of the credits. And I'm hoping that some of the poems and the information may have struck a chord with you. And speaking of chords, and so for now, I'll say goodbye and hope you'll try to give some thought to what was taught, and then abide in a place of peacefulness with lots of happiness inside.
Dr. Frank's Therapoems was produced by The Splash Marketing. The poems and illustrations can be found in his book, Can I Be Frank? Poetic Insights that Empower and Inspire. Illustrations in the book are provided by Craig M. Lindemann. You're welcome to share these poems for non-profit purposes, but please remember to cite their source. Dr. Frank can be contacted at dr.frankstherapoems@gmail.com.